Censoring the facts turns our children into idiots. They claim it's for our safety. I'll tell you what it really is. Removing information that empowers all the citizens. The truth doesn't damage points of view that are legitimate. They're trying to change amen to amen and women. How'd we let them make praying a microaggression?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Dion's Daily Dose for Friday. I think it's the 8th, right? Yeah, March 8th. It is actually International Women's Day. Now, I could say some things about how men don't get that many days, but I think everybody agrees that men get plenty as it is. So I'm not going to harp on that, but I am going to say we have a phenomenal guest with us tonight. Ella Bilderback. She is the LaPorte County Recorder currently, and she's running for re-election. And she has, I personally, I'm really happy that we were able to reschedule for today, because today, like I said, is International Women's Day. And she is actually an international woman. She is originally from Poland. So I'm going to bring her on the show and have her introduce herself. Hopefully you guys took the time to read the information that I put in there, but I know it's difficult. It's hard. I get it. I'm just kidding. Here we go.
Hello.
Hi, Ella. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be with you here.
So like I said, it's International Women's Day, and you're actually from Poland. So as much as I want to spend like the entire time talking about that, because I think that's awesome, we'll touch on it for a little bit if you don't mind, and then I'd like you to kind of introduce yourself.
Oh, absolutely. So International Women's Day, it was a big deal when I was growing up. I think it was a way to encourage women and young girls to be very independent. We were told you can do anything, pursue education. My father's personal philosophy was that all of us kids needed to know how to take care of ourselves. So my brothers had to learn how to sew a button. I had to learn how to put a nail in a wall. He thought, that you should be able to take care of yourself. And it paid off. Being able to be self-sufficient, be able to take care of yourself. It's great when you have a husband who can do those things for you.
Right.
But if you don't, you're not stuck. And
right.
So, I like the fact that I grew up feeling like I could do just about anything as long as I put my mind to it. And so, International Women's Day, it was a big deal. And it wouldn't be surprising to have a stranger on the street come up to you and give you a flower, because that's what they would do.
Oh, wow. That's cool. I haven't seen that.
No, but we're talking 30, 40 years ago. That was a different time. Yeah.
So that's awesome. So when did you move here to the U.S.?
So I came to U.S., it was actually July 29, 1990. And I was 20 years old.
Wow.
And my father reluctantly said, okay, you can go. And I think he felt that it would be okay because his sister, my godmother, was my sponsor. And so I came here to the US, and she was the one that, sponsored me, took me to her home, made sure that I had a good start. But again, that work ethic, the way I was raised, after 1 week of being with her, I had a job, and
wow.
We went. So yeah.
That's impressive. So at 20, you just how did you get here? Did you fly? Did you take a boat? How did you come?
I flew. It was 747, and the way we got off the plane, it was one of those big steps like you see in the movies, not one of those tunnels. And I remember taking a first step to the door, and the heat was horrendous. July 29,
right?
Concrete runway, and it was so hot. And I thought, oh my God, I'm in hell. But you could see, the big buildings in the background and everything. And so, it was a bit of a culture shock for sure. Yeah. I went from going to the store where you had an option of, one type of toilet paper and maybe one kind of bread and things like that, and to where you go and it's suddenly you have shelves covered, and how do you make up your mind,
Right.
So
right.
it was very different. But
in 19, you said 1990. So that was like, I'm trying to
Just
think of
after,
when I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, it was not long after the communism was basically done in
Yeah, it
Poland.
was the late 80s when the Berlin Wall fell down and then all that kind of started happening, right?
That's correct. I remember having to write a paper. How do you think this will work out? Is this a good idea? Because there was still those fears that, once Germany is united and strong, will they go back to their old ways? And
Mhm.
so we had to write a paper about it. Yeah.
That actually makes sense. We don't really consider that kind of thing here, here in the US, but obviously right next door to Germany, they're, uniting again after all the events of World War II and everything. And obviously Poland suffered tremendously under Germany. So yeah, that's an interesting consideration.
Yeah.
I can see how the country would be very focused on what does this mean for us.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And, even now, when I stop and think about it, one day someone asked me, so where is your hometown? Where is your family? Because I still have a brother who lives there.
Hmm.
And I looked it up, and it's a 20-minute drive from Belarus border, which used to be a Russian border.
Wow.
And so if things go crazy past Ukraine, my family is very close to what's going on. And so, there's always that little fear that, will this go any further? Will they be affected directly, not just, as a neighboring country?
Yeah.
So it's always on the back of your mind.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot to consider. 20 minutes is nothing. I mean, that's right there.
Yeah.
You can't
And
even
that's
get to Chicago in 20 minutes.
I mean, I was 10 years old. My mom woke me up and she was very fearful because she was born during World War II. My father was born just before. And she woke me up. She was crying and she's like, we're having war. You're not going to school. And I did not understand what she was talking about. All I heard was, you're not going to school. And I'm like, okay, good. Well,
Right.
I realized later that we were under martial law. And my city had a military base. And so we had tanks on the streets. And, we had a curfew, things like that. So later, when I was a little older, we lived through Chernobyl. We didn't know about it for a week. And so all the fallout happened to, unfortunately, when you look up the map of the fallout, we were in the deep red where it's really intense.
Oh, wow.
So I like to joke and say that's amazing that I don't glow in the dark.
Yeah. I could see that. I mean, and it just, so if you don't mind, like, what is your take on like these people that are so focused, for example, on little things that separate us versus the, like, you coming from Poland, like you had real issues to consider with, like you said, Chernobyl and World War II and all these things that affected your country. Does it like bug you when you see people like obsessing over like the kind of milk that they have available and stuff like that, I guess?
It doesn't upset me. I just find it kind of absurd at times. What's the big deal? You see a commercial for Charmin. Oh, it's soft on your behind. Really? Who cares? You actually can get the paper, right? I remember the times when you couldn't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, interesting. So you're recorder now. You've been recorder. You got elected in what year did you get elected?
2020, and I started January 1st, 21.
Okay, so you're wrapping up your first term. You've accomplished a lot. Like you guys did a ton of work in there. We
like
put
to
some
think
of
so,
it
yeah.
down, but talk about that a little bit if you don't mind.
So the first 6 months, I went in and I realized the computers were outdated. I mean, the program keeps shutting down because we have a program that we use for recording.
Mm.
And so when you're in the middle of recording a document and it shuts down on you, you have to start over. So you're losing time, you're losing efficiency. If you have a customer at the counter waiting for you to restart the computer, that's not efficient and it's not good customer service.
Right.
And so I dug through the documents, through all the records, and I found out that they were about 10 years old. They needed help. I talked to IT and they're like, well, you don't really have enough memory to even do updates anymore. So fortunately, my office has a perpetuation fund and I was able to replace the computers.
Awesome.
So then we had those issues. Over time, I replaced a couple of printers that were, grinding gears. You could literally hear the gears grinding.
Mm-hmm.
From there, while we were doing that,
Mm-hmm.
I also learned that we had over 500,000 documents that needed to be corrected in the system. So at some point, software was changed, and when that was changed, it didn't necessarily translate completely. So some information was missing, or maybe got flipped. Let's say mortgagee to mortgager switched up,
Right.
and so our vendor ran like a cleanup program, and separated the documents that needed fixing because you could tell them that something was missing from the fields that needed to be filled. And so we've been going through those. And like I said, I started with over 500,000. We are down to 150,000 roughly.
Wow.
So we did it. Yeah.
That's
So
a lot.
if I were to farm this out, because the same software vendor that does the cleanup, they have people who would do that.
Mm-hmm.
They used to use the crowdsource to do that kind of work, and you pay per document. So it's like $1.50 per document. We're talking a lot of money.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
If they are handwritten documents, that's $2.50.
Wow.
So,
So
we
what?
are doing it in office.
Yeah.
My staff, done with current stuff, they switch right away to the more, the old back indexing, we call it.
Mm.
And so we've been cleaning it up, and I'm really happy with the progress we've made. So.
Oh, I'd be ecstatic. I mean, that's an unheard of amount of like documents that were behind 500,000 documents. I mean, that has to represent a large portion of LaPorte County's like actual documents in its entirety. 500,000.
It's big, but not as big as you would think, because we've been recording since 1833. It was actually, I believe, September of 1833 when the first document was recorded. And so
See, it's so
when you
cool
stop,
you know that.
there is a lot,
Yeah.
a lot of documents. I was in my vault. It's a 2-story vault in the courthouse yesterday. And, when you look around, all these books everywhere, book after book after book, hundreds of them. They're beautiful, but that's another thing that I did. That space was filled with furniture that had no reason to be there. I mean, chairs stacked, old flower arrangements, some plastic, decorations, whatever, just a bunch of dust catchers, empty boxes from computers that were not even there anymore, old microfilm machines that I'm not sure that even work. And so I basically went and cleared all of it out. I told my staff, if you need me, I'll be in the vault. And I would come back covered in dust. I look like a coal miner.
Nice. Yeah, it
But
sounds
now
like
it's clean. There's plenty of space. The tables that we use to, put the books on and look at them are, actually available. The surface is not covered with God knows what. And so I'm really happy with that.
Oh, you should be. I mean, I was reading through when like because Ella had given her speech at the Republican breakfast that we attend, and she was talking about all that she accomplished in the recorder's office, and she had mentioned the 500,000 documents, and then she talked about restoring all these old books. And that part I got a little giddy about because I like old. I say old, but it's part of history. Our historical records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So I've had 5 Platt books restored. Those are the oldest ones. One of them was in such a bad shape and literally crumbling that it had to be attached to, well, it has a fabric backing. And so it had to be restored. And it was in such a poor condition that there was only so much that could be done with that particular one. And so it's in the special book, not a book, not, in the special box that it's for preserving documents so that, things can get into it so easily, protects it from any kind of pollutants and such. And that one is really, really fragile. But
it sounds like it.
so that one was the biggest, the hardest one to do something with. The other four were put in these museum quality film, like a sleeve.
Oh,
And so that way, if you flip through pages, you're not going to crumble the corners. All Scotch tape was removed because that's really bad.
mm-hmm.
So the acid was removed from the pages, and trying to think, there were some areas that needed to be taped. Where that was needed, special tape was used, and not just random Scotch tape.
Mm.
There's also this like a rice paper that's used to reinforce pages that are very weak.
Oh, okay.
So the company that I'm using is actually from Indiana, and they do the work based on the guidelines from the Library of Congress. So they know what they're doing. And so the plat books have been not just deacidified, but also restored. And what I like is that on the front, they put the date the work was done and what exactly was done to preserve it. So 20 years, 50 years from now, someone will be able to open that book and be able to tell what was done. So there's that. And then I have the deed books. So I started this project last year. And the deed books, I could have had them put in those sleeves. The problem with that is that the thickness of the sleeve adds to the thickness of the book. And so then you would lose the original book because it will have to be split into two.
Okay.
Alone, it takes up space.
Mm-hmm.
And since we don't handle the books as often as we used to, everything is digitized, I felt that just removing the acid will be sufficient. And this way, the books will last longer, because until up to mid to late 80s, we still used regular paper that was not acid-free. And so this is basically a beginning of a long project to get through all these books to make sure that they're protected. But I'll be getting the next batch back next Monday, or this coming Monday, actually.
Oh, wow.
Once those books are dropped off on the same day, the next batch goes out. And that way, we do it in a little increments. And I don't have to worry about if I happen to need that book for whatever reason, that it will not be out of my hands for too long.
Right.
They have a turnaround time. It takes about a month at the most.
That's not bad. Not for a restoration project like that. That's
just the deacidified. The restoration was a lot longer. That took months.
okay.
That was a lot longer. That I want to say that was 5 months. Yeah.
Still though, the deacidify. Make sure I say it right. Yeah, for a month, that's really good. How many generally do you send out at a time for that?
I do 25 at a time.
Oh, that's really good.
I probably could do more, but like I said, I don't like to have too many of them out of my hands.
Right.
I feel that way.
And in general, these things are fairly expensive when it comes to like preserving old documents in general, but it can be pricey. So like you said, you use a vendor here in Indiana, which I'm going to say I'm a huge fan of. I'm tired of seeing everything get outsourced to Chicago or other places instead of keeping it, local as possible.
Yeah. So when I was doing my research on who does that kind of work, there were places in Chicago, but again, there's very few places that do that kind of work. If you find them, they work on one book. Let's say you have a book that, you inherited from your great grandfather. Mm-hmm. So, they'll take one regular sized book. These are large books. We're talking 2 feet tall and about 1.5 feet wide. Wow. So they have some weight to them for sure. And and they're just fascinating. You know, the beautiful handwriting that most of us can't decipher. You know, seeing, you know, document signed and it has a seal, but the seal looks like a flower that a child would draw and the word seal written, because there was no actual seal.
Yeah.
And, you know, every document was written into the book. So every word of the document would be in it. So it's not like loose leaves, you know. It's quite beautiful.
It sounds
And
like it. Yeah, that's awesome. So now that we know like what you've been up to and what you've accomplished, which is a lot. I mean, I don't think there's anyone that can argue that you haven't done a ton in your first term. What is your goal if reelected? What would you like to obviously continue working on what you're doing? What else?
So I'd like to finish with the preservation of the books. My goal is to finish back indexing. At that point, you know, my focus always is to make sure that I learn as much as I can and that my staff is trained. So, you know, if we can have a little extra time to, you know, spend on learning a little more, you know, sometimes you feel like, oh my gosh, I can't leave the building, I can't go somewhere, or I can't do this or that. Mm-hmm. But I always focus on the fact that if I don't learn, if my staff doesn't learn, then we can't do our job. And so I can't think of anything from the top of my head right this second, but the fact is that our work is never done. So from
every day, I mean, I assume every day a new document needs to be recorded between.
Oh, absolutely. Today it was raining, so it seems like every surveyor in the county was in because they were recording the surveys and plats and things like that. You know, probably taking advantage of the fact that, okay, we can't go out on a field, so let's do what we can indoors. And we were swamped with those today.
Yeah, see, a lot of people don't think about the various offices, you know, such as recorder on a day that it's nasty out. You wouldn't think you would have that much business, but it sounds like it really ramps up with the people who can't go out and do their thing. They do other things like bring documents.
Exactly. And another part of my job is to make sure that we have everything on microfilm. That's a state code. We have to have it. It's still considered the most reliable way to preserve. So microfilm is supposed to last 400 years if it's stored properly.
Wow. And, I didn't realize it was that long. I knew it was a long time, but I didn't realize it was 400 years.
Yep. That's what with ideal
conditions, right? Yeah. Right. Storing it properly and all of that.
Exactly. And so I have some microfilm that it's stored in a maintenance building, which is in good shape and all that. But I'd like to, now that I have the vault cleared out and I finally have the space, I would like to move all of that into the same location. So it's not all over the place, so that someone comes in who doesn't know what it is and suddenly would be like, well, let's get this junk out of here. And then you have to replace decades of microfilm.
Right.
You know, I was at a conference last year, and one of the recorders was saying, "Oh my God, I don't have microfilm. There's like boxes of microfilm missing. Someone must have gotten rid of it. Oh, no. How do you guys replace it?" And everybody was horrified because we know how expensive it is. I mean, I get my microfilm of the current documents every 3 months. So 3 rolls of microfilm are about $1,200. It's not cheap.
Yeah, that's not cheap.
Kodak is no longer making the film that the most people use for it. Yeah. And so then the vendor who does a microfilm had to find a different source. So then the price went up, and it's, you know, it's always something.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of things that most people don't know or at least think about when it comes to the various duties at the recorder's office.
Right. And we also have online access to all our documents, because all records in my office are public access. The only ones you can't see is military discharge records. those are the only ones that you cannot see. The only ones who have access is myself and my staff because we have to.
Right.
So let's say you have your military discharge papers, you can come to my office and record them for free. If you need a copy, you can get that for free. If you need certified copy, you get that for free. So
Wow.
that's a benefit to our veterans. And
Awesome.
we have veterans office downstairs. There is also always the state veterans office. But I think it's a great place to have your discharge papers recorded because this way your family, if they don't know where to look for it, it's there. If you lose it, it's there. If the veterans office is closed for any reason, we're there. You can get it. And so, yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing that we can do for our veterans.
I had to, well, my grandfather served in World War II, and in order to get his records, we had to jump through a whole bunch of hoops because he didn't have it recorded locally.
Yeah.
He actually lived here in LaPorte County. He never did that. So it would have been nice for him to do that. Dang it, Grandpa! What the heck?
Well, but the thing is that, even if you come to my office and it was recorded, you have to show your relationship to that person.
Right.
We're not just going to give it to anybody who says, well, I've met this guy at the bar. I'd like his records. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
I looked up my husband's record. It was recorded. And I was actually like, wow, he never told me that he's done all those things.
Oh, was he like special forces? Was he like in the mountains?
No, but I guess he got some kind of thing for being a sharpshooter and something else. So it was interesting.
That's awesome.
That explains how he was so good at shooting those red stars at the fair.
Right. I knew you were hiding something. Right. So I see the constant demands of the office, because it sounds like it is a lot. How many staff do you have in the office?
So I have my chief deputy and I have 3 full-time employees.
Okay.
At one point I had 4 and a part-timer, but with the interest rates going up and people not refinancing and the houses are not selling as quickly, our business went down. And so we went down to the 3 full-time. The part-timer switched to full-time, and then my chief deputy and myself. That's sufficient. We don't need more than that at this point. If our business goes up, I can hire another person, but I don't feel that we need to spend the money just to have another warm body. I like to think that I'm more careful with the county money or with the taxpayer money than I am with my own.
Thank you. If only more elected officials would think that way, we would have far less of well, I'm not going to get on that tangent, but let's just say we'd have less of an issue. Leave it alone.
Yeah. Well, and the beautiful thing is that, the fees that are set by the state that we collect for recording go not just to perpetuation fund, but we put money into the general fund, surveyor's corner. There's like 6 or 7 different funds that the money goes to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Training for elected officials. And so this year, the only thing that comes out of the general fund in my budget is my salary and my chief deputy. The rest of the budget for my entire office is paid from my perpetuation fund.
Wow. Which is generated through the activity of the office.
Yes. So we earn the money and we share it.
Yeah, so, that is incredible.
Yeah. I don't know any other office that can say the same.
Exactly. Yeah, I can't think of a single other office.
Very few offices actually make money. Let's put it that way.
Right.
But it's not like, I decided, oh, yeah, let's charge this or that. No, it's state statute. This is something that, that was established by the state. And we just do what we're supposed to do. That's one of the things I've learned, that, my first recorders conference, where you start to learn more and more.
Yeah.
And it was in April, and I came back and I'm like, okay, this is the list of things I need to do. Turns out the budgeting was not done the way it was supposed to, because if we're using the perpetuation fund for something other than preserving documents, you have to have a sworn statement saying we have enough money to take care of the documents. We're having more than we need, so let's spend on something else. But I have to swear to that. I have to have it notarized. I have to put my name on it, and I have to put a specific dollar amount. I can't say, well, I'll spend whatever.
Right.
And then the council has to vote twice, and they have to approve it. That, okay, we agree with what you're saying in your sworn statement. And so learning that's how we're supposed to do, I go to my first budget hearing and I say, okay, this is my sworn statement, and here is the, I always forget the word, resolution or whatever it was that they have to vote on.
Yeah.
And I had them look at me like, why are you doing this? We've never done it before. And I said, well, it's okay, you haven't done it this way, but this is how we have to do it. And this is how I'm going to do it, because I will not get in trouble for not following the rules. And so, we did that. My next conference, I learned, oh, we're supposed to have public access fund that should have been created when we first had the computer system available to the public. And so that's probably a good 19 years behind times. And so went through the process of establishing the fund, and now the money goes to that fund and it's done the way it should be. So, you always learn something.
Oh, yeah.
And there's on top of that, you have, all the codes that rule the work we do. When you stop and think about it, when people say, oh, deeds, okay. So you have quitclaim deed, you have transfer on death deed, you have sheriff's deeds, you have tax deeds, you have, I mean,
a lot.
There's so many different documents, and then every attorney, every person prepares the document their own way. And so the word, verbiage can be a little different. So you have to look at it twice to be like, okay, what is this supposed to be?
Right.
And then when you have power of attorney involved, or different variables, and so you always have to stay on top of it. Technology is changing. Now you can notarize, do remote notary. And the rules for notary, if you're doing remote notary in Indiana, is a little different than if it's remote notary in California. And so so there's always something, sometimes it's just, you feel like every day you learn a new thing.
That's good though. I mean, it sounds like the job still has like it just but surprises for you, which is always a bonus.
Yeah, I enjoy it. I really do. And with the old documents, you just never know what you'll come across. And sometimes I find myself going down the rabbit hole. I've seen a document from the 50s establishing rules for a subdivision where it says, you can have chickens, and you have to, all these different things. And one of the things was you cannot have a person of color living in that neighborhood unless they're living help. And
wow.
I was just, because that was document from the 50s.
Yeah.
And it was still happening. I was absolutely blown away. So you just never know what you'll find. And then, of course, sometimes you just find things that are, fascinating personally. I was looking at a document like, that name sounds familiar. And so I texted my friend and I asked her, what was your your mom's maiden name? And she told me, and I'm like, I think I just came across a document that has to do with your mom, and it's just kind of fun. And I'm also involved with the historic preservation.
Oh, I think we lost Ella. She should be right back. I'm gonna I'm going to text her and let her know just in case. Oh, there she is. Yeah, she just lost connection real quick. There she is.
So I'm involved with the group called Preserve Historical Porte, and we do Christmas candlelight tour every year. And this year, well, 2023 was the first year since COVID that we did it again. And when we do that, we do a research of the history of each house that's on the tour. And I was doing research for a house, and I found the craziest connection. One of the owners of the house that I was researching is very, very distantly related to my late husband.
Wow.
And I was like, wait a minute, what is this? I mean, what are the odds, right?
Right.
Because I had a hard time finding the one person's information about her father.
Yeah.
And when I finally did, his family tree, this gentleman in like 15 something was married twice. And my husband was on one branch of the family, and this guy was on the other. And so I'm looking at the one branch of the family, and there's that fellow. Then I'm looking at the other, just out of curiosity. And then I see a name that looks familiar, and then the next one, and then I see my own name, and that was just really something. And so you just never know what you'll find.
Yeah, that would be pretty wild, going through it and seeing these connections and running across your own name.
And you get that tingling on the back of your neck, and you just don't know what you think. Yeah, it was really something. And I know a lot of people do research on their family properties. There's a lot of farms that are owned by the same family for generations. And, people come and do research to be able to document that the farm has been in the family for I believe if your family owned for 100 years, there's, you can get something from the state that acknowledges that this is a farm that's been owned by my family for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it's called, but I think it's some sort of program where if you prove 100 years, it's some sort of award or recognition or special status or something. Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful. I mean, the fact that your family's been there for so long, it's amazing. And there are people who, buy a house that used to belong to one of their ancestors, and they're like, oh yeah, my grandmother owned that house, and then it was owned by a bunch of other people in between, and now I live there, and I'd like to do a research and find out more. And so when you think about it that way, it's not just a bunch of documents, but also histories of families and history of this county, because you can't really document or show who owned what without the recorder's office. I mean,
right.
Realtors lost their mind when the COVID hit, because suddenly county was shut down, and they went straight to the state and said, you can't do this. The recorder's office must be open, because they were still selling. People were still refinancing, and you can't record it. It's not going to happen. And there are countries that don't have the system we do. And I cannot imagine how you prove the ownership of your property without that kind of,
Yeah, you were in office when COVID really happened, and you guys, like you said, they went to the state. You guys were considered an essential office, which means you couldn't just stay home. You had to go in and work. So that's something else that I think people should be aware of is during COVID, when a lot of us got to, stay home and do things remotely or play on the computer or watch Netflix, you were there working, you and your staff, right?
Yes. So I was there in 21. We were still basically going downstairs, because my office is on the second floor, and we would meet with the people downstairs and bring the stuff up, take it back to them. It was very inefficient. As soon as the commissioners brought the idea of reopening so people could come up to our window, I'm like, yes, please, because this makes no sense.
Right.
Well, we have glass partitions that actually protect us better than, going downstairs wearing a mask. And so I thought, yes, let people in the building, let us do business the way it should be, because we're actually more protected that way. And it's better for everyone. And it saves us the trouble going up and down the stairs, multiple times.
Right. Sometimes with those really big books, right?
Fortunately, no.
Oh, okay. You can
No.
tell how much I know about what's going on.
Well, we did have a title company reach out to us and say, we've been researching because they do title search. So they look through all the documents, I believe 50. And so there was one page that they couldn't read. And so I got the book, and sure enough, that one particular document in the entire book, someone used different type of ink and it faded out.
Oh,
And you had to look at it at a certain angle and with the light hitting just so to be able to read it. And so it was impossible to get a copy to them, but I was able to give them information that was on it. And because it was so far back, it was okay. But
so what do you
that
do? What do you do in that case? You discover like this one page from this massive book is written in a different kind of ink, or maybe was mimeographed, copy, photocopy poorly, whatever. Just this one page. How do you fix that?
That was a handwritten document, so it was
Oh, okay.
not a copy. And there's really nothing we can do because I can't go and trace it. That would be, defacing the document, and I would imagine be considered changing it. And so it just has to be the way it is. But we did index that in the computer system. So if you want to look it up, you will see the information. You will just not see the image of the document.
Right. Yeah, you can't view the original because it's illegible, but all the information you were able to put into the system.
Right.
Okay, awesome. I mean, is there a process for like restoration of documents like that, or are they just lost forever?
As far as I know, there isn't, but I have not researched that enough to be certain that it's impossible.
Okay, I was just wondering.
That's my next project. You never know.
There you go. Yeah, like you don't have enough, right?
I like to stay busy. I mean, honestly, sometimes maybe a little too busy.
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you're certainly staying busy. There's, again, I like 500,000 documents behind is mind blowing. Now, I don't want to, throw accusations out there or anything like that, but do you think that that is a process fault or a personnel type deal?
Well, like I said, that happened when the recorder's office switched from one software to another.
Okay.
And so there was some kind of a, maybe because of the code, how it was written, I don't know. It didn't quite translate, how it should. It didn't fill all the fields the same way, maybe because the fields were not put in the same. It could have been a very different program.
Right.
That was before my time. But, 500,000, like I said, it might seem like a lot, and it is a lot. But considering how many documents were recorded since 1833, it's not as bad as you think. And, some information was still there, and some of that is correct, but we have to look at each one of those and make sure that every field is filled the way it should be. So that, if somebody wants to go and research it, they can find it.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a program online. So I had a customer call me yesterday. She lives in California, has property in Porte, and she needed a copy of her deed, and she was able to go online and print it in her home. And
that's so cool. Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I meant to ask before and it slipped my mind. So how do people go about doing that? Do they go to the county website?
It's a website called landrecords.com. There's also, if you go on the recorder's page, because the county has a website, on the recorder's page, there's actually a tab, which that's one of the things I want to fix. I already talked to to a person who is the admin for my page, because folks have trouble finding or understanding what the way it's put in. They don't know that that's the one you want to use for searching, because it's called tapestry. And just because it's called tapestry doesn't mean I know or what does that mean? So I want to go and fix those tabs and, rename them so they're more easily found, and also that people understand what that is. And you can then search any records from anywhere, and you can print them at home.
I'm just looking. This is what kind of just so people know what I'm doing. I put in LaPorte County, Indiana recorder. The first thing
Yeah.
is the laportecounty.alien.gov, which is
If you click the tab under that picture that says website, it will take you straight to the recorder's page. So it's slightly to the, yeah, right there.
let's see here.
Yep, that's the one.
There we
it
go.
is. So if you scroll a little bit on the left, those yellow boxes, different, see, and when it says Laredo Records, that's the portion that's confusing, because Laredo is for customers who have subscription. Most of the time, people who use it a lot, like title companies. Then Tapestry is for you and me, your average folks that can find records that they want. And so I want to rename this and make it so it's higher on the page, and so that it will, let's say, I was thinking, call it, public records or public access records, or however I'm going to rename it. That's still in a work. But I want it to be more easily found and easier to understand what is this supposed to be.
I think that's
So
a great idea. Yeah, because I don't know what a Laredo record is, a Tapestry record. I assume most people, that are looking, don't know.
Would not,
Yeah.
no, not unless they use it, regularly. So, yeah.
So
And
this
then
is
very top, there's also a little thing that folks can sign up for, the property fraud alert.
right here. Yeah.
That's something, that's available to the public for free.
Which I just want to say, I worked as a realtor for several years, and we actually had some people that had an issue with property fraud, and essentially someone had filed a false title transfer. And this, it's free, guys. Like, seriously, if you own property, I highly recommend at least looking into this.
Yeah, it takes 30 seconds at the most to sign up, because you put your name and how you want to be contacted. And so if any document is recorded that involves your name, within 24 hours, you get a notification that it was document recorded, put your name on it, what type of document, the document number, and then you can either contact my office or you can contact the company directly. And they have an 800 number and ask, say, what is this? What's going on? We did have a gentleman, that's the only case since I've been in office, a gentleman from New York. He owned house here in town. He inherited from his mother, and he didn't get his tax bill. So he contacts the treasurer's office, contacts auditor's office, and they tell him, well, you didn't get your bill because you don't own the property, so why would you?
Oh, okay.
And he's like, wait a minute, that's not correct. So he calls my office. We send him email attachments with the documents so he could look at it, and he said, that's not my signature. And so right away, I said, you have to call the sheriff's or the police. He contacted sheriff's office. They reached out to us, asked for copies. We provided those, and turns out that the person who signed over the property was actually his sister. And I'm not sure how she was able to do it, because it was notarized. So, either the notary there was a fake ID involved. The notary didn't look at the ID because they're supposed to check that.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
the point.
it was somehow accomplished, and it looked legitimate. There was no way for me to know that was not. There was no way for anybody to know that was not.
Right.
Because as long as it's signed, notarized, you have to trust the notary checked the ID and made sure that the person that's signing in front of them, because they're supposed to sign in front of them, is the person on the picture.
Yeah, that's the whole point of having a notary, is so that they're verifying the information,
Exactly. And so the property then changed hands again. So by the time he found out, it was, changed hands again.
Wow.
And so the person was actually prosecuted. So, it
Good.
was a happy ending. However, it doesn't always happen that way.
Right.
Many times there's huge amount of money involved because you have attorneys, involved. You have someone who purchased sometimes a house that, didn't know that it was not a legitimate transaction. So they spend money to buy a property that they had, whoever had conducted the transaction had no right to sell.
Right.
And so we had a presentation once at one of those training sessions, and it was an attorney and a title company person talking. And when they explained the process, how long it can take, how complicated it can be, how much money it's involved, it's incredible. And it's really, really scary. And the more time goes by, the worse it is, because if you buy a house, because sometimes people own more than one property, so they won't know right away that something is going on. And so their example was, let's say your house was sold, you didn't know about it, and the new owner put, let's say, 100,000 into improvements. By the time you find out, that's not the same house you own, right?
Right.
And so then it was in front of the judge because, okay, this person spent the money to buy it, spend the money to improve.
Mhm.
So who is the legitimate owner, and then how does that person recover that money?
That
Do
yeah.
they lose the sales money? Do they lose the money they invested? And so it can be incredibly scary process. And typically, I believe the attorney said it takes about 3 years to resolve.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a while. And everything's kind of up in the air in the meantime, and you don't know who's going to end up with what or how it's all going to work out.
You're lucky you'll find an attorney that charges $300 an hour because most of them are more expensive than that.
Right. Yeah. Well, everything's expensive, but attorneys, like, come on, guys.
Hey, they
I,
went to school for years, right?
I mean, yeah, I guess you get what, but especially when it comes to attorneys, in many cases, you get what you pay for. So, that's something to keep in mind as well.
Very true. Yeah.
So we have a few minutes left. I wanted to ask you, so we've talked a lot about what you've accomplished since you came and since you got elected, started updating things, started fixing things. If you don't mind, tell us like real quick about your life from the time you got here in the US until like today.
Okay. Yeah. So in Poland, I went to school to be a men's tailor.
Oh,
So I can sew. And so when I
haberdashery.
here, the job I got was, working for a subcontractor who made mother of the bride and prom dresses and bridesmaids dresses, things like that.
Wow. Okay.
There was a company called Alice Designs. I think they're still around. They still do make prom dresses. After that, my next job was working in the bridal shop, which was really quite interesting. You meet all kinds of people from different backgrounds, and
Bet.
it can be either harrowing or really a beautiful thing because people typically are very happy when they're there. And
Usually.
so,
Yeah.
yeah. But then I had my daughter. Well, actually, in between those times, I met my husband. We got married. Uh, he was actually from LaPorte. He was working in Chicago. He was a union carpenter. And we met through a mutual friend. And he liked languages. So when he was in military, he served 3 years in Germany. So he's fluent in German, and he started learning Polish. And my friend was like, "Well, you're learning English, and he wants to learn Polish. We should meet." And that's how we met. And when our daughter was almost a year old, we moved to LaPorte. Our neighborhood was changing. We didn't quite feel safe there. And instead of just moving to another part of the city, we decided to move to LaPorte. And so um, then I had my son, and I spent quite a few years raising my family. And um, then, unfortunately, my husband got sick. He had a genetic disease that he got from his mother. It affects the brain. It's a Huntington's disease.
Oh, okay.
It's a very devastating disease. And
Yeah.
so at one point, I spent my 40th birthday following an ambulance that took him to nursing home because he at that point was suffering from dementia. I could not take care of him.
Right.
It wasn't safe. I had to become his legal guardian, and so that I've learned how to deal with bureaucracy in a hurry. And I worked at Walmart for 10 years. I started out as a part-time, then I moved to overnights. That was the only position that was available full-time. And I wasn't doing that stocking for very long. I had an assistant manager who one day I needed to go to the office to get a berry for one of those scanners that we used. And when we walked in, there was a set of keys laying on the floor. I picked them up and she's like, "Ah, you're one of those." And she's like, "I have a job for you." And so I ended up doing inventory management for quite some time.
Okay.
And then I was just done with overnights. It really messes with your sleep pattern. I did that for like 3 years. And so when the position supervising unloading opened up, I applied. I got that. I did that for, I want to say, a year and a half. And then I switched the days because that was a second shift. I switched the days and I was a sporting goods department manager till almost the very end when I got elected. So
Okay.
that was my favorite, really, the sporting goods. That was my baby. Growing up with 4 brothers,
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
I can imagine you would know.
in the least. Yeah.
Right.
I did have to learn about bullets, which I never knew a thing about. But in the beginning, I would be like, point at which one you need in the case.
Right. Just tell me which one, because they all look the same.
Right. Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. I learned English on my own. When I lived in Chicago, I would take a bus down Belmont for like 30-minute drive to Truman College. It was pretty close to the lake. I think it was on Clark Street. And the teacher spoke Spanish and English. And my English, when I came to this country, I could say hi and bye. And that was it.
Wow.
So when I went to those classes, I couldn't even ask, could you repeat that? Or what does that mean? Can you say that again? I did not have that ability yet. And so I felt like I was wasting my time because I was just, I go after work. I'm already tired. So by the time I get there and by the time I get back home, I was exhausted. It was just too much. And, after a month, I felt like I learned about this much. I mean, I knew about as much as when I started. And so I started learning on my own. One of the biggest motivators for me was that I missed reading. And I did not have enough books in Polish to read. I always loved reading. So.
Yeah, I imagine that would be like a precious resource. I can't think of like too many. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but I can't imagine there's like a huge ton of Polish language bookstores.
Right. And the way I read, I probably couldn't afford to buy enough of them.
There is that.
There is that. So yeah. But it was an interesting thing. I mean, I've learned Russian in school. That was you had to learn foreign language, and that was one of the very few available. They offered German, Russian, and in some schools, French, very few schools.
Yeah.
And typically they would, for some reason, only have the kids that were in these special athletic classes learn German. The rest of us had to learn Russian. And so.
Wow, that's interesting.
When I finished school, I was as comfortable with Russian as I am with English these days. So, but I haven't spoken in 30 years. So,
Wow.
So
So
I kind of learned
Russian.
Well, I can't claim Russian anymore, I don't think. But at one point I could, yes.
Well, yeah, you learned it. Whether or not you still, are fluent in it, maybe, that's open for debate. But at one point,
if I did a few months of, refresher course, I'd probably be pretty comfortable with that. A little anecdote, at the end of high school, we had to take these tests, so it was written math and written language, Polish language in my case. And then we had oral exams, and you get to pick one of the subjects. Well, actually, there was 3 different ones. One of them was the foreign language, and then we had 2 other ones, and I chose math because why not, right?
Okay.
I figured I can do math better than having to memorize all the dates for history or something, which I wasn't bad at history, but
Yeah. It's the date memorization that's so hard. Like you got to remember exact date and time and like year and like all this stuff, all the people involved. And it's like, that's a lot.
it's a lot. And I enjoyed it when you do it in the classroom and you do it on, regular basis. But when you suddenly have to answer this, random question out of nowhere, how do you know?
Right.
Well, one of the things that I had to do was the test for my Russian language, and it was oral exam. And I remember leaving the house to go and take that test. And my dad didn't say anything to me at the time. He told me after I got home. But apparently when I left the house, I was so worried and stressed about it that I said goodbye to him in Russian. But I aced that test. I aced it because one of the questions was about this book, and the whole exam is in Russian. So here I am arguing with one of the examiners saying, no, I'm correct, you're not. And so she got up, found the book, found the spot in the book, checked, and she's like, okay, you're right. And so I got an A for that one.
Nice work. Good job. That's always like one.
I love reading, and I happened to read that book twice because it was actually really good. And
what book is it, if you don't mind?
I don't remember the title. It was about this Russian pilot who crashed and ended up losing his feet to the frostbite, and he was so determined to go back to fighting that they retrofitted the plane for him so he could still do it. And it was a quite fascinating story,
Wow.
And yeah,
it sounds good. Like I'd read that if I could read Russian. Excuse me. So
I've learned English, and I would have Polish English dictionary, and I had Webster's dictionary, and so I would read something, and if I don't understand what the word is, I would translate it. I would look up what it means, and when you're looking up the meaning, you come across words you don't know. So reading took time because you're learning as you go. But I came across my favorite word ever, and that is germane. Still my favorite word.
Nice. It's a good word. I mean, there are far worse words out there. But it just goes to show, and this is something I want the viewers to understand. It goes to show the I guess adventurous spirit of you, but more importantly, like guys, seriously, she came here when she was 20 to landed in Chicago and just taught herself English. Like that's mind blowing. And that's what people like me, my grandfather, or excuse me, my uncle tried to teach, because I'm from Louisiana, like deep South Louisiana. And my uncle spoke very fluent Creole, Cajun, French, whatever you want to call it. And he was adamant that I learn it, adamant. And the only thing I wanted to learn were the curse words. I didn't care. I was a kid. I didn't care about anything else. Yeah.
But it does.
He was so disappointed because I don't have a flair for languages. Some people do, some people don't, but push past it. And that's just, I've always been very, very in awe of those people who are able to easily.
Well, for me, it's the same as with Russian, and so was it with the English. You kind of struggle, and you're like, okay, what is this word in English? What is that word? Whatever. And then it's like this weird switch flipped, and suddenly everything makes sense and everything comes together, And so my father-in-law used to joke and say that when he first met me, I couldn't even laugh in English, And then he gets himself many years later, he got himself a word of the day because he said, I feel like your vocabulary is better than mine. I need to, fix this. I grew up here. I have to. So,
Right.
But
can see
I like to stay busy. I like to be involved. Like I said, I'm a member of, actually, vice president of the Preserve Historic Laporte. So, when we needed a website, I was on the committee for that. For a while, I was delivering Meals on Wheels on my lunch breaks and, things like that. I'm involved with Tri Kappa. So that's a community. It's actually specifically Indiana women's group.
Oh,
And so we do different things, but one of the things that our group here in Laporte does is that once a month we cook dinner at PAC Center. So last Wednesday, when some folks were at the headquarters, I was cooking dinner for folks at the PAC Center. So
that's awesome. Yeah, you do a phenomenal amount. Like, aside from your job, that obviously there's so much involved with that, just based on what you've said and what I know about the sheer number of things that get recorded on a daily basis. It's overwhelming for most people. But not only do you do that, you go on and do volunteers and everything else. Like, I get tired just listening. I'm about to fall asleep. No, I'm just kidding.
it's not that bad. And those things are not like you do it every single day, but it keeps you busy. It keeps you busy, but it's also, my kids are adults. My daughter is 30, my son is 28. I've been widowed, God, for almost 10 years now. So, my time is mine, and I like to stay busy because, it gets lonely at times, but at the same time, you meet people. I mean, today I saw this gentleman that I've met when I worked at Walmart. He was one of the guys that, stocked Nabisco stuff. And I mean, he gave me a big hug, and, I was so happy to see him because you just, you maintain these relationships and you meet people that you just, you never know who they're going to be later in life for you, what kind of friend or acquaintance. And that's what makes life worth living. It's the people you meet.
I wholeheartedly agree. So my last question for you is, if people want to know like more about you or learn about your campaign or help with your campaign, where should they go? Is there a website? Is there a Facebook? Like,
There's a Facebook page. It's Ella for LaPorte County Recorder. It shouldn't be too hard to find. I don't have a website, but I do have an email. Well, I probably should come up with a simpler one because it's my first and last name spelled. It's Elzbieta Bilderback at gmail.com.
okay,
So everyone calls me Ella, but my first name is Elzbieta, and it's, I think, a chore for most people to pronounce. Wherever I go and someone has trouble, pronouncing a name, I know what they're trying to say mine.
It's Elzbieta Bilderback at what.com?
Bilderback at gmail.com.
I'm going to put it in a banner real quick. Or
Okay.
is it? Hopefully this works.
Yeah.
I had it before, and for some reason it didn't say it. So if I got any of that wrong, let me know.
Nope, that's correct.
Look at me. First time.
Nicely done.
Thank you. If you guys want to know more about Ella, by all means, email her. She is very responsive and super nice. If you can't tell, like, and I mean this sincerely, like, I always talk up my guests, but truly, I've known her for a few years. As I said in the post, she's one of the coolest, kindest people I've ever met.
Well, thank you.
And I mean that sincerely. So, is there anything else that you want to let people know before we wrap it up?
I would say if you have any questions or if you just want to chat, give me a call. I can give you my phone number too. That's 219-380-1171, or just shoot me an email, reach out to me on Facebook. I'll be more than happy to meet with you, talk to you. If you're interested in being involved with my campaign, again, reach out. I'm I welcome any help I can get. That's, that's always important. If you'd like to put a sign in your front yard, or, reach out to me.
Mhm.
I have some signs at the Republican headquarters that are available, and yeah, just get the word out. Talk to your friends about me, and if they have questions, same thing. Reach out. I'm available.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it. And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. You made it painless.
I try. I try.
Thank you.
All right. We will talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Ella Bilderback, Elzbieta. I hope I said it right, but that is how you get in touch with her at the bottom of the screen. You can email her. You can visit her Facebook page. Seriously, she's really, really cool. I don't know. I know that there's like someone running in the primary as well. Who you vote for is completely up to you, as always. I know Ella personally. I've known her for a few years. That's why I was so excited for her to come onto the show, because I think that there is a lot about the recorder's office that people don't know, and a lot about her. And yes, Liz has a sign, and it'll be up in the yard any day now. I know that there's like a rule about when you're supposed to have your signs up, but they generally don't mess with private property. You can put whatever you want whenever on private property. My house, my rules. But more important than anything else, though, is vote. Whomever you vote for, make sure you vote. Get out there. If you're conservative, pull a Republican ballot. If you're liberal, pull a Democrat ballot. Vote in the primary. Primary voting is so incredibly important. It's at least as important as voting in the general election, if not more so, because in many areas, including Indiana, oftentimes the real election is the primary. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you as always for choosing to spend your time with me. I greatly appreciate it. And stay tuned, because Saturday, we're going to do another face-to-face. Me and Sean, we got a lot of things to cover, some really wild stuff going on. We're also going to do, and I agree. Thank you, Patricia Howard. Great job, Ella. I wholeheartedly agree. She was a little nervous because she had never done like the show or anything like it. And I think she did phenomenally. So, ladies and gentlemen, let her know. I really do. I think she did great. She was a little nervous about it, and she killed it. Absolutely. So, tune in Saturday night, 7 p.m. Central. Sean and I are going to have some stuff, and then we're actually doing 2 of the face-to-face next week, because he has the time to do so. So we're going to start picking it up. We're also reaching out to additional candidates. If you or anyone you know is running for office and you would like to have the public have a chance to get to talk to you directly, hear from you directly, instead of just tiny little social media posts or press releases or whatever, let us know. You can email me at talk@dionbergeron.com. And that's DionBergeron.com. Talk@dionbergeron.com. Or you can reach us Facebook, YouTube, X, Rumble, Dion's Daily Dose. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you. God bless Indiana. And God bless the United States of America. Have a great evening.